Picture yourself standing before a mirror in a quiet room. What do you see? Most of us immediately focus on our appearance, the features we like or dislike, the signs of aging, the expression we're wearing. But have you ever stopped to consider who exactly is doing the looking? Who is this mysterious observer that we call I? This simple question opens the door to one of humanity's most profound investigations. Throughout history, philosophers, mystics, and now scientists have grappled with understanding the true nature of self. What we find when we look deeply enough often challenges everything we thought we knew about who we are. In our modern world, we build our identity like a fortress. Our name, our job, our relationships, our beliefs, our past experiences, all carefully arranged to create a solid sense of self. We invest enormous energy into maintaining and defending this construction. We say things like, "This is just who I am," or "That's not me at all." But what if this very construction, this elaborate architecture of identity, is actually limiting our experience of true freedom? Buddhist psychology, developed over thousands of years of careful introspection, offers us a radical perspective. It suggests that what we call ourself is more like a verb than a noun, a continuous process rather than a fixed entity. Think about it. Every cell in your body is constantly being replaced. Your thoughts and emotions flow in an endless stream. Your beliefs and preferences change over time. Even your memories, which seem so solid, are actually being reconstructed each time you recall them. Modern neuroscience has begun to validate these ancient insights in fascinating ways. Brain imaging studies show that our sense of self isn't located in any single part of the brain. Instead, it's more like a symphony emerging from the coordinated activity of multiple regions. It's a dynamic process that our brain constructs moment by moment, yet we experience it as continuous and unchanging. Consider your own experience. Can you find a single thought, emotion, or sensation that stays the same? Even in the span of reading this sentence, thousands of subtle changes have occurred in your body and mind. Your breath has moved, your posture has shifted, thoughts have come and gone. Yet something remains aware of all these changes. What is that awareness? This brings us to a crucial distinction that both ancient contemplatives and modern researchers are exploring: the difference between the contents of consciousness and consciousness itself. It's like the difference between the images in a mirror and the mirror's capacity to reflect. Thoughts, emotions, sensations, memories. These are all contents, like images in the mirror. But what is the nature of the mirror itself? The revolutionary insight of contemplative traditions is that we habitually mistake the contents of consciousness for consciousness itself. We identify with our thoughts, saying "I am angry," rather than "there is anger arising in awareness." We claim our emotions. "I am sad," rather than "sadness is present." We own our memories. "This is my life," rather than "these are the stories currently appearing in consciousness." This mistaken identification leads to what Buddhist psychology calls suffering, not just obvious pain, but the subtle yet persistent sense that something is missing or not quite right with our experience. We're constantly trying to adjust and improve our reflection in the mirror, never questioning whether we are the reflection at all. Modern psychology has its own way of describing this phenomenon. Concepts like cognitive fusion, emotional attachment, and psychological flexibility all point to the same fundamental insight. Our suffering comes not from our experiences themselves, but from our relationship to those experiences, particularly our tendency to identify with them completely. As we begin this exploration of the empty mirror, we're not trying to destroy or deny the conventional sense of self. That would be both impossible and unnecessary. Instead, we're developing a more sophisticated understanding of its nature. Like a skilled actor who can fully embody a role while knowing it's not their true identity, we can learn to engage with our personal identity while maintaining awareness of its constructed nature. This understanding isn't merely philosophical. It has profound practical implications for how we navigate our lives. When we begin to recognize the fluid, constructed nature of self, we naturally hold our identity more lightly. We become less defensive, more open to change, more capable of genuine connection with others. We start to experience a freedom that doesn't depend on getting ourselves just right. As we deepen our investigation into the nature of self, let's start with a simple observation. Most of us live in a state of constant commentary. There's an inner voice that narrates our experience, judges our actions, plans our future, and revisits our past. We've become so accustomed to this voice that we rarely question its authority. We assume this internal narrator is who we are. But let's look more closely at this assumption. When anxiety arises and the voice says, "I'm not good enough," who exactly is speaking? When desire emerges and it declares, "I need this to be happy." Who is making that claim? This is where the emptiness of the mirror becomes fascinating. We begin to notice that these thoughts, like everything else in our experience, are appearances in consciousness rather than consciousness itself. Think of your mind like a vast theater. Thoughts, emotions, sensations, and memories are the actors on stage. They come and go, playing their roles in the drama of your experience. But you, the pure awareness that knows all of this, are like the space of the theater itself. Just as the theater doesn't get wet when rain falls on stage, your fundamental awareness remains unchanged by the contents of experience. This is where many of us encounter a common misconception. When we hear about the illusion of self, we might imagine this means we don't exist at all, or that our experience isn't real. But that's not what's being pointed to. Rather, what's illusory is our habitual way of identifying with certain aspects of experience while rejecting others. We say, "This is me, that isn't me." But who is making these distinctions? Consider how this plays out in daily life. When we're praised, we eagerly claim that experience. "Yes, that's me." When we're criticized, we often resist. "That's not who I really am." But what if both praise and criticism are simply events appearing in the same aware space? What if our true nature is neither enhanced by praise nor diminished by criticism? The ego, which modern psychology has studied extensively, can be understood as this habit of identification and rejection. It's like a character in a dream who has forgotten they're dreaming. The ego constantly works to maintain its sense of separateness, its story of being a distinct, enduring entity. It does this through an endless process of comparing, judging, wanting, and fearing. But here's what's fascinating. The ego itself isn't the problem. It's a natural function of human consciousness, like the operating system of a computer. The suffering comes from our unconscious identification with it. When we believe we are only this limited self-concept, we cut ourselves off from the vastness of our true nature. Let's explore this through direct experience. Right now, as you're engaging with these words, notice what happens when you shift your attention from the content of your thoughts to the awareness that knows these thoughts. It's subtle, like trying to see your own eyes without a mirror. Yet this simple shift can reveal something profound. The awareness that knows your experience is inherently free from what it knows. This is where mindfulness becomes not just a relaxation technique, but a tool for profound self-investigation. When we practice mindfulness, we're developing the capacity to recognize the difference between the contents of consciousness and consciousness itself. We begin to notice that while thoughts, emotions, and sensations are constantly changing, the awareness that knows them remains unchanged. Consider how this understanding affects our relationship with difficult emotions. When fear arises, instead of becoming completely identified with it, we can recognize, fear is present. This slight shift from "I am afraid" to "fear is arising" in awareness can make a profound difference. It's not that the fear disappears, but our relationship to it transforms. The same applies to our stories about ourselves. We all carry narratives about who we are, our successes and failures, our capabilities and limitations, our hopes and fears. These stories aren't inherently problematic. They're part of how human consciousness makes sense of experience. The key is recognizing them as stories rather than absolute truths. This recognition doesn't mean we should try to get rid of our personal identity. Rather, we can hold it more lightly, like a talented actor who can fully embody a role while knowing they're not limited to it. We can engage with our human personality while remaining grounded in the deeper truth of our nature as awareness itself. What's particularly fascinating is how this understanding affects our relationships with others. When we're less identified with our own self-image, we naturally become more open and authentic in our connections. We no longer need others to validate our sense of self, and we can meet them with genuine curiosity and compassion. As we conclude this exploration of the mechanisms of self and identity, notice what's happening right now in your own experience. Who is aware of listening to these words? What is it that knows your thoughts and reactions? Without trying to find an intellectual answer, let these questions point you toward the direct recognition of your own aware nature. Let me share a story that might sound familiar. Jane, a successful executive, spent years crafting what she thought was the perfect life. Perfect job, perfect relationship, perfect image. But every morning, looking in the mirror, she felt something was missing. Despite checking all the boxes of success, there was an underlying emptiness she couldn't shake. Then one day, during a particularly stressful meeting, she noticed something extraordinary. She could observe her anxiety without being consumed by it. This simple observation changed everything. This is where our journey becomes deeply personal and practical. We've explored the concepts, We've examined the mechanics of self, and now it's time to bring this understanding into the laboratory of our daily lives. Because ultimately, this isn't about philosophy, it's about freedom. Let's start with something you can try right now. Take a moment to notice any tension in your body. Really feel it. But here's the crucial part. Instead of trying to change it, simply observe who or what is aware of this tension. You might notice something fascinating. The awareness that knows the tension is itself completely tension-free. This isn't just a clever observation. It's a doorway to a profound shift in how we experience our lives. Here are 3 powerful practices you can begin working with immediately. First, what I call the weather report practice. Just as we can watch weather patterns move across the sky, start observing your thoughts and emotions as if they were weather patterns in consciousness. When anxiety arises, instead of saying, "I'm anxious," notice anxiety is passing through. When joy bubbles up, instead of claiming, "I'm happy," observe happiness is dancing in awareness. This simple shift in language can create remarkable changes in your experience. Second, experiment with what I call the mirror moment. Next time you're washing your hands or brushing your teeth, look into the mirror and ask yourself, who is looking? Don't try to answer with your mind. Instead, let the question create a space of curious investigation. You might find that the more you look for a solid self, the more it seems to dissolve into pure awareness. Third, practice the zoom out. When caught in a difficult situation, imagine your consciousness can zoom out like a camera lens. You might be in an argument, feeling intense emotions, but can you notice that all of this, the words, the feelings, the physical sensations, is appearing in something larger? This larger context is your true nature, the space in which all experiences come and go. But let's be real, this isn't always easy. You might be sitting in traffic, late for an important meeting, feeling your blood pressure rise. The last thing you want to hear is some spiritual teaching about the nature of self. This is exactly where the rubber meets the road. Can you notice that even this frustration, this resistance, is appearing in awareness? The awareness itself remains unchanged, like the sky unaffected by passing storms. Here's something fascinating. As you practice this way of seeing, you might notice that challenging situations become opportunities for awakening. That difficult colleague becomes your teacher of patience. That traffic jam becomes your meditation hall. That argument with your partner becomes an invitation to see beyond your usual reactive patterns. Remember the mirror metaphor we started with? Here's where it gets really interesting. Just as a mirror isn't enhanced by beautiful reflections or diminished by ugly ones, your essential nature isn't improved by success or damaged by failure. This understanding brings a profound sense of freedom. You can fully engage in life while remaining grounded in something deeper than your temporary experiences. Let's talk about relationships, where this understanding becomes particularly powerful. When we're not desperately trying to maintain a fixed self-image, we can be more authentic, more present, more available for real connection. Imagine discussing a disagreement with someone while remaining aware of the space in which both perspectives are arising. This doesn't make you passive, quite the opposite. It allows for a response that comes from wisdom rather than reactivity. Here's a practical example. Next time you're in a heated discussion, try this experiment. While listening to the other person, pay attention to the awareness that's hearing their words. Notice how this simple shift can change the entire dynamic of the conversation. You might find yourself responding from a place of clarity rather than defensiveness. As we wrap up this exploration, let me share something vital. This journey isn't about reaching some final destination where you never experience difficulty again. It's about discovering the freedom that's already here, in the midst of your very human life. It's about recognizing that while your experiences constantly change, you, as awareness itself, remain like the empty mirror, inherently free from what you reflect. Take a moment now to notice. Who has been reading these words? What is it that's been understanding these concepts? Without trying to grasp it with your mind, rest in the simple recognition of your own aware presence. This is not something you need to achieve or become. It's what you already are. The true miracle isn't in transcending your human experience. It's in fully embracing it while knowing yourself as the aware space in which all experience arises. Like waves in the ocean, your thoughts, emotions, and experiences can fully express themselves while never being separate from the vast ocean of consciousness that you are. Remember Jane from the beginning? She didn't stop being an executive, didn't stop caring about her goals, but she discovered something far more precious than achievement. The freedom to be fully herself while knowing she's not limited to any particular version of herself. That's the gift of the empty mirror, and it's available to you right now, in this very moment. So as you move forward from here, carry this question with you. Who am I really? Let it be a gentle inquiry, not a problem to solve. Let it open you to the possibility that what you're looking for is what's looking. And in that recognition, find the freedom that's been here all along. Thank you for sharing this exploration of the empty mirror. Until we meet again, may your investigation be gentle, your discoveries profound, and your journey filled with the joy of recognition. In gratitude and presence, namaste.